On the 8th of May 1773, a butler broke into his master's wine cellar while his boss was abroad in order to steal his finest claret. Rumour has it that he was so sloshed he not only set the cellar ablaze, but also set fire to his boss's entire home, which had stood since Tudor times. We've come to magnificent Henham Park near Southwold in Suffolk, with its beautiful parkland, well-stocked lake and ancient trees. But thanks to the fire, no trace of that Tudor mansion. The butler fled the scene and was never heard of again. But the house which he supposedly burnt down is still under here somewhere.
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
Oh!
In its time, was it one of the finest Tudor homes in England? That's what we're here to find out.
Posh. Italian marble.
Oh, and we've got 3 days to do it. Henham Park might be a sedate country estate today, but this important site boasts an illustrious, dramatic past. For more than 500 years, it's been owned by the well-connected, aristocratic Rous family. The Tudor house is long gone, but the Rouses are still here. The latest in the Rous dynasty is Hektor, and he's not quite what you'd expect of an English country gent. How come you've got an Australian accent and not a posh English one?
You know, my father was a bit of a wheeler-dealer, a bit of a wild card. He was expelled from Harrow when he was 15. He went out to Australia to get some sunshine, I think, and it was the land of opportunity then. So, you know, I was born out there. He inherited the property in the 80s, and, you know, 8 years ago he sent me back to try and fix it.
Swapping a career in banking for one in estate management, Hektor's the third oldest son and runs the estate on behalf of his baronet father. He's transformed Henham's dwindling fortunes by opening it up for others to enjoy. It's a Premier League venue for events and festivals like Latitude, now in its 7th year and a roaring success. But for the next 3 days, we'll be going back to a more gentle period in Henham's history. Hektor will be putting his impresario role on hold to help us delve into the lives of his pommy ancestors. He wants to discover what, if anything, might be left of Henham's Tudor mansion. Getting to grips with the estate is site director Francis Pryor and Time Team's Phil Harding, who's armed with the earliest known map of Henham and a large estate plan. Fantastic 3D map this, isn't it? Presumably this is the whole estate.
It is, Tony. It's huge, 3,500 acres, but the centre of the whole estate is here.
Ah, that's the Tudor house, yeah?
Yes, that's right.
Which has been blown up here?
Yes, and as you can see, I mean, it's a huge house. I mean, it's almost a palace, in fact.
And look at the detail in the map here. Look at this whacking great gatehouse, and presumably these are the main residential areas. It is an entire record of a Tudor stately home.
Which has been burnt to a cinder.
It doesn't matter. We could still get some seriously good archaeology in the ground showing what these foundations, what that building once looked like.
This 1699 map is a big clue as to the layout of Henham's Tudor house before it was burnt to the ground. It had 4 blocks of rooms known as ranges built around a central courtyard. The front range seems the most ornate, so that's what we're after first. All hinges on Time Team's intrepid geophys team locating it beneath the ground. And there should be no excuse for missing it, because John's got a brand new gadget. It's the latest in Swedish radar technology, and he can't wait to show off to anyone who's prepared to listen.
Basically, it's replacing Jimmy.
Really?
In the past, he used to walk up and down with a cart.
That's right.
With this system, we've got 8 antennae on the back of the vehicle, so it's 8 times as efficient. And we can go much more quickly. It's collecting more data, and it gives a far better picture of what's below the ground.
Jimmy's every move is tracked by surveillance, which tells his onboard computer exactly where he is and enables him to instantly build up a picture of what's under the ground. And no doubt John will be taking the credit for whatever it finds.
Oh, that's extraordinary.
So that's what I was saying, but I didn't believe the results are going to be so clear. I mean, that is absolutely stunning. How deep are we there?
Just over a metre there, 1.2.
Yeah.
And so we're saying that's the wall of the Tudor building,
Yeah.
that's the gatehouse there,
Yeah.
and then the wall continuing. You don't need to dig it, Francis.
It is quite extraordinary, isn't it? It really is.
Of course we need to dig. This is Time Team. At last Phil's got the green light, so he's putting in a trench over what we think is the Tudor mansion's gatehouse.
Are we going to go for it then?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Grandad?
Come and dig a hole.
Geophys's new technology has come up trumps. As soon as the JCB starts to dig, up pops a Tudor brick.
Wow.
That's a good start, isn't it?
There's a bit of brick.
And then another.
Looking at it.
And one of them looks a tad charred.
Oh, look at that. It's black and burnt. Is that the great fire? Evidence thereof?
Raksha and Matt are opening a second trench a few metres east of Phil's. It's where Geophys believe the Tudor house's corner tower should be. And if they can find it, we'll be able to accurately piece together the width of the Tudor building for the first time. But apart from scale, we want to get a handle on how grand the building once was. Historian Suzannah Lipscomb has been doing some digging around herself and has unearthed a late 17th century illustration of the house.
And this is the real treat. We found this in the British Library, and I don't think you've seen this before. This is a picture of what Henham Hall actually looked like as a Tudor mansion.
Wow, look at this thing. Amazing.
Isn't it gorgeous?
It's stunning. I definitely haven't seen this before. Incredible.
And it gives us a real sense of what they might find.
So what do you think we'll be able to get at? You know, are we talking turrets, and you know, what parts of the building do you think they'll be able to identify?
Well, we can see how magnificent it was. We can see these 4 turrets. We can see that it's 3 stories. But what they'll probably find, I mean, look, we've got stonework here, on stone pointing on the edge of the brick turrets. We've got leaded glass, which would have blown out in the fire, so there might be bits of it there. We've got tiles here, so they might find some tiles from the roof. And look at this ornate door. This looks like a frieze of some sort. So maybe we'll find some terracotta details. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
That'd be fantastic.
Henham Hall was a sumptuous palace built by one of the most important men in Tudor England, Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk. Not only was he Henry VIII's best friend, he was also married to Henry's sister, Mary Tudor, former Queen of France. Charles and Mary were lovers during her marriage to Louis XII. When he died in 1515, the pair married in secret. Normally, this would have been seen as treason, but thanks to the family connection, Henry VIII imposed a fine instead of lopping off their heads. Henham was sold to the up-and-coming Rous family in 1545. And for the next 250 years, it stood as a proud expression of power and influence, until its fiery demise. Luckily, it seems that the butler's handiwork hasn't completely obliterated the house. Back at Phil's gatehouse trench, Tudor material is bursting out of the ground by the minute. And John's basking in the glory of his fancy new gadgetry.
Oh, it's so nice to see it.
Well, yeah.
It's already been told.
Look at that, eh?
We saw it 2 hours ago.
Oh, please, don't spare me the details. Spare me the details.
Look, we keep telling you, there's no need to dig anymore.
Oh, yeah.
This brickwork clearly indicates a big structure, but Phil isn't prepared to give Geophys all the credit, especially when they're, well, Geophys.
All it tells us
Mortar
at
on
the
top.
moment is that what you saw on the geophysics is here.
Yeah.
What it doesn't say is we are looking at a Tudor palace. The gatehouse, to me, would have a hell of a deep foundation. And I don't know whether yet this is deep enough. How deep do you trace these foundations to?
Well, I think they go down to about 1.60 metres.
Yeah, see, I don't know whether that's enough.
But we might not see the bottom in the radar.
Good old radar, it's got all the answers except in the questions you want answers to.
But while Phil's not yet certain he's got a substantial gatehouse in his trench, at Rakshas's Corner Tower trench, they seem to be bang on the money.
There you go.
I think does that look like a part of a window?
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
Oh,
It's a rose.
Oh, wow.
Francis, I just heard, ooh, wow, look at that, it's amazing. What have you got?
Well, it is. We've suddenly come up with this terracotta. Look at that.
Ooh, oh, wow, that is amazing, isn't it? Lovely find.
But I think it goes like that because there's moulding here, which is very similar to it coming through just here.
Oh, yes. Yes, I think that, yes, that goes like that.
Well, I think we know what period that came from, don't we?
Well, I think so, yes. It looks very Tudor. Very.
There's no doubting this is a spectacular find, but there's not enough foundation structure exposed in Rakshas's trench to confirm whether this window piece is from a corner tower or a different bit of the building. We're clearly in the right area for a Tudor house, but until we identify which bit of it we have in each trench, it's impossible to fathom the size and scale of this mansion. As the day progresses, more and more tantalising terracotta comes out of Rakshas's trench, and there's no holding back Hektor. After all, it's been nearly 250 years since a Rous last looked at this stuff. Hektor, look at that. There's your heritage.
Thank you. Very, very kind.
I didn't give it to you, that's from your ancestors. Francis, what does all this say?
Well, it's really classy stuff, as you'd expect. I mean, look at this. And there you see, look, you've got the Tudor rose. So, you know, it's actually a symbol of loyalty and royalty.
Great stuff, and it's just the end of day one. Mind you, the bad news is that this trench here, where we've been beavering away all day, we still can't make head nor tail of it. It's total confusion. Because Phil's not at all convinced that we do have the gatehouse here after all. There's a lot more work to do to prove it either way. But as we head for home, puzzling over which section of Hektor's ancestral pile we've got in the ground, we can only hope our new super-duper geophys machine can shed some light on the story tomorrow.
Discover the past with exclusive ancient history documentaries and ad-free podcasts presented by world-renowned historians from History Hit. Watch them on your smart TV or on the go with your mobile device. Download the app now to explore everything from the wonders of Pompeii to the rebellion of Boudica and the mysteries of prehistoric Scotland. Immerse yourself in the captivating stories of this remarkable era by signing up via the link in the description.
Beginning of day two here at Henham Park in Suffolk, where we're hoping to find evidence of one of the finest Tudor houses ever built. Yesterday we put in a trench here and another one over here, but quite frankly they were pretty confusing and didn't tell us very much about the layout of the house. Although last night, John, you printed out some geophys, didn't you? Which I think is fair to say you're fairly excited about.
It was pretty good. I mean, if we step back to yesterday, we put this trench in because we thought we might be at the main gateway into the house. We expanded the survey and, I mean, basically we've got this pattern of wall lines. This is the inner courtyard. And what we suddenly realised is we're not at the central gateway, we're actually at this corner tower. And so Phil is excavating that corner tower there.
Yeah. So where do you think the main entrance is?
Well, the main entrance is actually going to be here. So we've got to do a bit more. And, I mean, you then want to put a trench in?
I do, yes, and I don't know, the spoil heap's in the way, Tony.
So we've put the spoil heap across the entrance to the entire building, over the main entrance.
Over the main entrance.
The entire house, yeah.
Yep.
So the bad news is, because we started digging without the full geophys picture, we've spent a whole day looking for the Tudor gatehouse in the wrong place. Geophys now think the whole house is 6 metres further east. That means Rakshas's trench isn't part of the house at all, but could be a ditch where demolition rubble was dumped. Extraordinarily, we now think Phil's trench is the corner tower, which puts the gatehouse under the spoil heap, and Tracy's been charged with finding it.
Right, this is on the alignment of the wall where Phil was, okay? But I'm hoping we're going to come down here on the central gateway, okay?
Cool. Yep. Fingers crossed that Geophys are right this time. Their results are key to cracking the mystery of the Tudor house's size and grandeur. Whatever it's like, one thing's for sure. It would have been more imposing than the current Rous residence, where Hektor's showing Susie a priceless heirloom, an 18th century scroll showing the Rous family tree.
This is one of the best historical artefacts we've got, this pedigree roll.
Wow.
So if we can...
How far back does it go?
I mean, legend has it that we can trace it back to the Norman conquest.
So what we're looking for is the person who actually bought Henham Hall. Ah, here we go. Sir Anthony Rous bought Henham Hall in Suffolk in 1545 and married Agnes.
So what about the guy who was around when it was burnt to the ground? Oh, it doesn't have to go on, doesn't it? I'm running out of tables.
Sorry, Tony. Here, let me...
This is extraordinary.
Bring it up a bit.
Is this it? This is him, isn't it? Sir John Rous Baronet, only son and heir, married in 1788, and the house burnt down in...
1773.
Oh, that's him, isn't it? Bish bosh, we got him.
So this is the period we're interested in, stretching from this guy to all the way to this guy. People were living here in that wonderful Tudor mansion that we're hoping to find here at Henham Hall.
The scroll reinforces the importance of this family, who for centuries rubbed shoulders with royalty, commanded troops against Napoleon, and even had islands in Australia named after them. And to find out if we've uncovered any more of their pad in our trenches, I've hitched a ride over to Phil's trench with our very own hairless biker pottery expert, Paul Blinkhorn. When I left Phil in this trench yesterday, it was like a labyrinth of archaeology.
Yeah, that's right.
And you were pretty confused, weren't you? Are you still confused now?
Not at all. Absolutely 100% clear what's going on. It is the corner tower of the Tudor mansion. I mean, actually, if you look at it on a drawing, you can see exactly what's going on. Here is the foundation of this tower. Now, that wall there is the front wall of the building.
So this is the long main wall of the whole building?
Absolutely.
And if I wanted to get into the tower, I'd go in through there somewhere?
That's it, absolutely, Tony. It is very, very clear.
What about finds?
Well, crucially, in the bottom of the foundation trench, we got that.
Yeah, well, that is a piece of, I suppose, what we call in the trade late Essex redware. It's sort of 15th, 16th century. And unless I'm very much mistaken, it's either a mug or a drinking jug, which is the sort of thing you'd expect to see. You've got people building, they're doing hot, heavy work, they're drinking lots.
Get away.
I know, I thought you might be able to relate to that.
Never know.
Trust Phil to stumble across the first connection with beer drinking on the site, but it's an important find, slap bang in the middle of the Tudor period. The question of what this estate might have looked like when they were knocking back the real ale is something landscape archaeologist Stuart Ainsworth and Time Team surveyor Emma Wood are grappling with.
There's one photo I took from the helicopter, which I was looking at.
They're overlaying aerial photos onto the 1699 map to see if they can identify anything Tudor in the modern landscape. And Stuart looks like he's spotted something. Wasting no time, he's grabbed Hektor for a jaunt through Henham's 3,500 acres in search of a driveway that shows up on the historic map and in the modern photographs. Today, only part of the track's visible. Stuart wants to find the rest of it and the entrance to the driveway.
Can you see we're in this big, wide hollow here? It's about 10 metres wide.
Yes.
You can see the profile down the side going back up that side, Hektor. This isn't a wide ditch. This is the old road. It's a road that would have been here in the medieval period.
Are you kidding me?
It's a classic medieval sunken hollow way. It's sort of worn over hundreds and hundreds of years. You wouldn't see the house at all over there. It's completely hidden. And part of the idea of how these landscapes work is that when you arrive at the house,
Right.
it's a reveal. You know, it's unleashing itself on you visually. So you're not intended to see it until you get quite close to it. What this map shows, the 1699 one, is that the route is dead straight, and it's got like an avenue, line of trees one side, double line of trees on the other side. I was looking at that very large oak through there. See that one?
Yes,
down?
yes.
I think that could be one of these avenue trees down here.
This discovery paints a vivid picture of Tudor Henham. 500 years ago, visitors would have approached the house along this magnificent avenue of fine English oaks. And that avenue would have led straight to Tracy's trench, if she's found the main gatehouse in it. Tracy, have we established yet that this is actually the gatehouse?
Yes.
Why do you say that? Give me some proof.
Once we've had a chance to actually clean down the trench and trowel it off, you can see behind you there, this substantial area of brickwork here set into sand. They're Tudor bricks. The shape of the structure looks right, so we're definitely in the gatehouse. There's no doubt this is the Tudor gatehouse, which is really exciting.
So where is the gatehouse actually?
Well, you would be coming through in the middle here, pretty much just where you're sitting.
And some finds, Danny.
Yeah, we've got a really nice little copper farthing of Charles II. So that dates between 1660 to 1685.
So that's when the Tudor house was still there before it burned down?
That's right, yeah. And this has just come up, this lovely little, it's very fragile, actually, little mount. So this has come from probably something like a casket or one of those big books that you see that are bound very nicely. You can see there's 4 little rivets here, and then right in the centre is a keyhole where they probably would have locked the book or the casket. So it's a really nice object.
Lovely.
Isn't it lovely?
What about the pottery?
This is really cool. So you've got the base here, and you can just see the finger marks, the finger imprints of the potter that made it. This is a bit of beer jug that dates from the 15th, 16th century. So we've got drinking going on site.
Tracy's discovery of the gatehouse is a significant breakthrough. Because we know that Phil's trench has a corner tower in it, we can now work out the entire width of the Tudor house.
Very high quality.
Standing buildings expert Richard K. Morris has been doing some calculations.
Huge building.
How big is it?
It's about 40 metres square.
So if an Olympic runner was running past it, it would only take him 4 seconds?
Yeah, and me about half an hour. But yeah, it's not huge, it's not massive, so it's not up there with the Audley and the Champton Courts, but it's got a very similar design motifs and quality of construction to that.
What was its function?
I think it was more, it wasn't the main house of the Duke of Suffolk. It was more of a secondary home, a sort of weekend retreat. But it was a house that was built for a Queen of France, after all.
If it's not as big as somewhere like Hampton Court, does it look similar?
It looks similar to parts of Hampton Court, but it looks similar also to houses of kind of high aristocratic style in East Anglia, like this one. This is Oxborough. So it's got similar things, you know, central gate house, big tall brick, and long ranges either side of it, and courtyards.
We now know the house was 40 metres wide, smaller than we'd imagined from the illustrations. But we still don't know its depth, and we need more evidence of real splendour. Even so, this was no country cottage. It was a holiday home fit for a queen. But mere metres away from our main dig is a massive piece of building we'd all been ignoring for a day and a half, but it's finally come to Francis's attention.
Out there was a Georgian mansion, OK? It was the successor to the Tudor house. It was torn down in the 1950s, actually demolished. So we know it was there, and there are photographs of it. So John has geophysed it, haven't you?
We've done magnetics over it.
Yeah.
And I think we're pretty confident of where it is. We can see 5 rooms at the front of the mansion.
So we had 1 grand building, now looks like we've got 2. Have we bitten off more than we can chew? Well, these 2 don't seem to think so, but then they've felt that before and they're not always right. Afternoon day 2 at Henham Park in Suffolk, where we're steadily piecing together a forgotten Tudor mansion. While Phil and Tracy crack on with the ornate front of the building, Francis has deployed John on a renegade mission.
The
Georgian building, like that. So
When the Tudor pile burnt down, the Rouses replaced it with a great Georgian mansion. And John's rediscovering where it once stood. Although, to be fair, he did have a whacking great clue staring him in the face. Built in 1785 by Sir John Rous, it echoed the classical fashions of the age, with its Ionic scrolled columns and pastoral friezes.
People were living in here for 200 years, and we've actually got this picture, this is from the 1880s, of this extraordinary staff that were here. I mean, look at this. There's wonderful chaps with their middle partings here. And
I love this bloke here, don't you?
I want these lamb chops. They look fantastic.
And these women have tiny little waists. Look at those corsets.
After the Second World War, it became increasingly difficult to maintain a house and staff of this size, and Hektor's great-uncle demolished it.
Heartbreaking.
But that's not the end of the story either, because you're about to build in the same area.
Pretty much, yeah. We've got permission for a hotel, an apartment building, so we could share the park and share the property. And...
Do keep an eye on your staff, though. You don't want someone coming down in the middle of the night, a bit tiddly, looking for some booze, and you just start the whole horrible cycle all over
Fantastic.
again.
Smoke alarms and locks on the cellar. Perfect.
Because Geophysics has plotted such a clear picture, Francis believes there's no need to excavate the Georgian house. He wants to focus on Tudor trenches, including a new one that Time Team's Rob Hedge is digging.
It's quite substantial, isn't it? That is a solid piece of masonry.
The trench was opened over some exposed garden wall that Francis thought might hide Tudor remains. But while Tudor bricks and mortar are eluding us, there are definite clues the Tudors were here.
Fantastic, look at that. That's brilliant. Well, that's a silver hammered coin.
Hammered?
As in it was hammered. They made it like that, bang, stamped.
See.
It's beautifully thin, isn't it?
Isn't it lovely? And I can see on the back of it, there's what we call a square-topped shield. So that's Elizabethan.
Okay.
Elizabeth I.
Ah,
and just at the top, actually, if you look there, just at the top of that shield, you can see the date, 1575.
It's yet another find that ties in with Henham's Tudor heyday. But the Rouses spent a bit more than a pretty penny on Henham Hall. Back at the incident room, Susie's uncovered a 17th century inventory that paints a vivid picture of a lavish lifestyle.
And it describes all the rooms that were here. There were 45 rooms. So we've got the hall and we've got the parlour, we've got the great dining chamber, the gallery, and on it goes. And what's best about this is it tells us amazing detail of the insides, of what was actually there. So, for example, in the hall, we've got a hawk perk.
I'm sorry, they had a hawk in the dining room.
It shows how into hunting they were. Extraordinary. And also we've got things that show their great wealth. So we've got chairs that are covered with velvet and embroidered. And also down here we've got feather beds with covers of silk. So this is really sumptuous. And we also know they enjoyed themselves because here we've got playing tables and we've got descriptions of them keeping instruments here, so 2 violins and an orpherion, which is a type of instrument. So they're making music. So there's gambling, there's hunting, there's hawking, and there's music making. So this is a place to have a lot of fun.
Few of the Rouses' possessions survived the Tudor house's fire, but records tell of one treasured family heirloom being grabbed from the burning house, a wassail bowl and dipping cup, used to celebrate special Rouse family occasions. Unfortunately, it's since vanished, so Time Team's Matt Williams has volunteered to try his hand at some wassail whittling so he can leave Hektor with a brand new dipping cup.
So what have we got here then? Is this one of the wassail bowls?
This is a modern copy of a wassail bowl, and certainly in Tudor times they would be using a bowl like that, set at the top of the table so the Lord of the Manor can keep an eye on it, and then the hoi polloi would be drinking out of a little cup like this.
Right.
And that is what I'm going to attempt to turn here.
All right.
Bet you'd like to go at this, wouldn't you? By all means.
So
it keeps you fit.
Feet on the treadle here.
I'm sure you're aware you only turn or cut on the downstroke.
Right.
Okay. And that's just about where the stem of the goblet is going, so, you know, you can take off as much
material there as you want.
Right.
I'll tell you what, I'll take it because I know you're having 3 days in time, team, but this has to be finished by the end of the day. Anyway.
They're carving the cup from sycamore using a traditional pole lathe. For a skilled expert, it takes less than an hour to transform rough log into smooth cup.
Rackshar to Danny.
Rackshar's trench is uncovering a ditch stuffed with Tudor demolition rubble. But among the broken bricks, she's also getting hints of the sophistication of Henham's previous occupants.
We've got this, which I think is a book clasp.
Ooh. Oh, wow, look at that.
This tiny scrap of metal is actually a strap end that would have fitted onto the end of a thin leather belt for strength and decoration. Made from 2 flat pieces of copper alloy, the strap end has tiny V-shapes hammered into it. Tarnished after years in the ground, originally it would have been eye-catchingly shiny. This everyday object could have been worn by a man or a woman.
Do we have a semi-date?
Well, I'll see if I can find any parallels for it to date it more closely. But I would have a guess at it being probably about 1450s.
No. That's amazing.
This isn't just another pretty find. This one small piece of metal predates the Tudor house. And it's not alone. In Tracy's gatehouse trench, she's finding pottery that's definitely not Tudor. It's lured over Francis and got Paul, our pottery expert, positively drooling.
Oh, hello. Look at Susan out the corner of my eye there. How you doing?
Oh, very well, thank you. What's that?
It's a piece of a Saxo-Norman storage jar. It's a bit of Thetford ware. It's very typical of the big storage jars they used in the late Saxon period, and they crept into the early medieval periods.
But this is meant to be the Tudor gatehouse.
I know, it is, isn't it?
Now, are we getting more?
Yeah, we've got this nice little collection of pottery. A nice bit of a 13th century glazed jug.
Green glaze, yeah.
A bowl of about the same date with glaze on the inside, and a nice early medieval jar rim. So, sort of late 11th to 13th century. And it's consistent. We're getting this in all the trenches now at this end. There's people living here in the late 11th to 13th. There must be.
That's fantastic news. Are we getting anything else?
What we do have that's come out of this trench, which is medieval, is that half of a little bell. You can see there the hanging loop on the top. Now you imagine that as a complete circle with a little ball bearing or something like that inside maybe to make a noise. I mean, that is lovely, and I've not seen another one. I mean, that's really nice then. Yeah.
And so it's about the same date as the pottery.
But this huge background scatter right across the site.
We've got several dozen shards of this now.
You just can't argue with that. There was a substantial early medieval presence here, and that's completely unexpected. I really wasn't expecting that. Well, to be quite honest, I'm over the moon.
He might be over the moon, but these finds mean Francis now has to rethink his entire strategy. They're a surprising new clue that these trenches aren't just hiding a big Tudor house, but possibly something just as substantial and much, much earlier. But this brand new evidence has emerged with just 1 day left to go. Matt, for one, has much more pressing things on his mind. Back in the walled garden, his wassail cup is at a critical stage.
It's almost ready for drinking. But as you know, the original wassail bowl, which is now lost, of the Rous family, had an inscription, which we do have a Latin copy there. And the tool, as you can see, is pretty hot. But you've had a go at everything else. Would you like to have a go at this?
Well, I might as well finish my training.
Bearing in mind that is very, very hot.
In Tudor times, engraving would have been done using a red-hot wire heated in a charcoal burner.
Great guns there.
At the end of day 2, the team have all very reluctantly downed tools for a hard-earned tipple. With no pub around, Hector's improvising with his own alfresco tavern and is open for business. And thanks to Matt, we've also got something to drink out of. We're christening his work of art Tudor style, to the sound of music the Rous family would have heard when they first bought this house nearly 500 years ago.
Phil,
If you could be Master of Ceremonies and do the honours, please.
This is an absolute great honour. I will, with my great pleasure, dip it in. But of course, we've still got a copy of the original Latin inscription. I'm not much of a Latin inscription man.
No, you're not.
Francis, no. But basically, a summary of it says, "My bowl is so clean, my liquor so pure. Joyful ye be, but none of your jaw." So none of your jaw when you've had a few of these, all right? Cheers, Hector.
Thanks, guys.
Wassail!
Music!
So we've already excavated a Tudor building in this park. We've got a Georgian one as well, but there was a third building which we hope to find, which might be much earlier, and it's that we're going to look for tomorrow.
That's not bad.
Beginning of day 3 here at Henham Park in Suffolk, where we're looking for the family seat, or should I say the family seats, of the Rous family. But we've only got one day left, it's already 9 o'clock, and for some reason I can't quite fathom, Francis has just put in a trench here round the back of the Tudor mansion. Why I don't understand this is because I thought you said that once we'd excavated that Tudor range, we would have learnt all we needed to know about the Tudor building.
No, Tony. We'll know most of what we need to know about that range. The thing is, there are 4 ranges, OK? Now, when you look at the bird's eye view map, you can see this range of buildings here doesn't look like the rest of it. And what I think you've got here, if you look at it very closely, is the remains of a medieval hall.
So the medieval people might have built this bit, and then the Tudors came along and tacked on the other 3 sides to make it look like a modern building.
Well, absolutely, and that did happen elsewhere, so it wouldn't be unique.
Finds from our other trenches prove there were people living here in the medieval period. Francis thinks the back range of the house might be a much earlier medieval structure that was later absorbed into the Tudor mansion. And that's what Phil's looking for in his new trench. If he can find it, we'll be pushing back the history of this site by several hundred years. But almost immediately, they're onto something that drags us right back to that binging, bonfire-causing butler. Could it be pewter?
Oh, what, like seriously burnt pewter?
Yeah.
Like a
mug. More evidence of the fire. But worryingly, we don't know if that inferno has obliterated all trace of medieval foundations. Phil's got some serious digging to get on with. But over in Rakshaw's trench, alongside the front of the Tudor house, she's got more than a hint of Henham's medieval past. Digging deeper, she's found a series of ancient ditches. One runs straight through the Tudor house, so must predate it. She's called in reinforcements in the shape of landscape archaeologist Stuart.
We seem to have come across this monster ditch coming all the way through here, and we haven't even got the other side yet.
And from what you're saying, it's a big wide ditch. It's opened over a long period of time. Lots of material being dumped in it over a long period of time. I mean, it cries out monster to you. It cries out moat to me. A big, wide, possibly wet ditch, which would define an enclosure around a medieval hall. This could be it. Your monster could be a very, very important monster. I'll leave you with it.
Whether moat or monster, it's certainly got Stuart's imagination running riot. He's got a hunch that these ditches might just be the remains of a moat that would have encircled a medieval house. He just needs to prove it. But time waits for no man, not even Phil Harding. He's only got a few hours left to uncover solid medieval remains. Phil, this is the trench that we put in to try and ascertain whether or not there was a medieval building, wasn't it? How have we done on that?
At the moment, it's impossible to say, Tony. I mean, what we do have is masses and masses of demolition, but whether it's a demolition of a medieval building or a Tudor building, I really can't say.
So how would you describe what we've got here, then?
I describe it as a cellar. Now that we've actually got it all stripped back, you can see up on the step there, you can see that brown, soily stuff right against the edge of the trench. That is the natural soil level. You can see down there, it is nothing else but brickwork, and it is demolition rubble. We still haven't got to the bottom of it. That is a massive hole. A massive hole in a building is a cellar.
finds?
Well, it's an absolute storehouse of finds which actually tell us so much about what was going on in this building. Posh Italian marble.
Wow, yeah.
And that's not your average sort of kitchen chopping board. I tell you, that is an internal fixture and fitting. That is seriously posh. But these are our star finds.
Some pretty heavy finds.
They are absolutely. This is all molten lead.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Molten lead that has seriously been fire affected.
Ah.
And if you really want an indication of just how intense this fire was, look at the window glass.
Oh, you'd have needed some heat to bend it like that, wouldn't you?
That is buckled and twisted window glass. It is quite incredible.
This is so great. I don't remember the last time there was a time team where I told a historic story at the beginning of an episode and by the end we found the location where that happened. Well, we can't prove it 100%, but the story was about a butler in a cellar that caught fire, and here's the cellar, and it caught fire. The Tudor finds are fantastic, but with the clock ticking down, there's still no sign of our elusive medieval hall in the trench. But driven by the discovery of early pottery and the historic map, Francis isn't giving up just yet. He's convinced a big medieval building was once here. So Stuart needs to find the moat that would have once surrounded it.
What's the level down there, Emma?
The level is 62.487.
The ditch contains a layer of silt that proves there was once water here. He and Emma are measuring its level. They track the moat across the park.
Need one at this water level here, Emma.
And finding wet stuff is surely a good omen.
62.506.
If the water level here matches the silt in Rakshaw's trench, then it's possible they were once part of one connecting moat system. But they're not the only medieval search party on site. Our historic standing buildings expert Richard has gone back to the map and thinks he can at least imagine the layout of the medieval hall if we get a bird's eye view.
Yep. It's quite a long one.
What would it have looked like?
Well, essentially you've got one long single-storey building under a huge roof, and we're at the low end of it. We're above the buttery and the pantry end of the building.
So what happened in the pantry and buttery?
So that's for the storage of food. So they may have been preparing food there as well, but the fact that they're storing food means that they're very wealthy, that they can afford to do that and have the space to do that.
And then what happens here?
Beyond that, you've got a screens passage. That's your entrance into the hall from a porch. And that divides the service end, if you like, at the low end of the hall from the Great Hall itself, which will be one massive space open to the roof with the family at the far end.
What happened in the Great Hall?
The Great Hall was really the heart of the medieval manor house, so it's where everything went on. So everybody was in there, they were eating, they were sleeping, so you have to imagine the floor covered with rushes, strewn with grass, and basically that's where people would have slept. And in the time up until the 13th century, the Lord and Lady are actually there as well, sleeping amongst everyone else.
All great stuff, but so far nobody's got hard evidence of a medieval house here at Henham. Francis's last hopes hinge on Stuart and his quest for a moat.
And what we found was that the level in bottom of Rakshaw's trench exactly matches the level within that much of the current water level here. So engineering-wise, no problem having a moat on that site over there.
Well, I think that makes loads of sense because a house like Henham would have almost been obliged to have had a moat. Everybody had them. They were a symbol of power and authority. And there are thousands in East Anglia, thousands of moated sites. So, yes, I'm sure there must have been one there.
This feature here might be the biggest single remnant of that medieval landscape that we can still see on the surface. It's been there from the date of this map, still here today.
Well, that's good enough for me. One medieval moat means that somewhere in Phil's Trench there was once a medieval hall. And it's very likely that it was largely wooden, which explains why the fire annihilated all trace of it. But Phil's Trench has been a triumph. It contains enough finds to prove that this was where the back range once stood, which means we can finally work out the entire dimensions of the whole Tudor house. At the centre of the front elevation, we unearthed the foundations of 2 brick towers, which stood either side of an elegant gateway. We've dug up its finest terracotta, lead and glass from its many windows. We also discovered one of its 2 corner towers, built to enhance its imposing nobility. Although it was smaller than we originally envisaged, and not one of Tudor England's finest, it was no humble abode, but one built with style and pizzazz by Charles Brandon, Henry VIII's best friend.
I think it's been a terrific success, Tony. I mean, just for a start, we've shoved the history of this place back 1,000 years. I mean, it's quite extraordinary what we've revealed.
How are you feeling about it all?
I'm staggered by what you guys have done in only 3 short days. It's absolutely amazing, you know, to get this history about 480 years of my own family. It's added real colour, you know, for myself. So, very impressed. Thank you very much.
To find one stately home in an enormous park like this has got to be quite a good result. To find 2 is very good. To find 3, it's got to be an absolute triumph, isn't it? And I know that it's made one Australian-born landowner with building plans of his own very happy. And maybe in 500 or so years' time, when another troop of archaeologists comes here, they will be able to excavate not just a Tudor mansion, not just a Georgian one and a medieval one, but the remains of Hektor's house as well.